the far north of Sweden, 150 kilometers inside the Arctic Circle. A true survival test, but also a fantastic place to be. You don't need any prizes for realizing that in this environment, cold is your biggest problem. This might look like a winter wonderland, but at temperatures as low as -30, I'd actually be warmer snuggling up to the peas in your home freezer. Last week, it was -50. But all joking aside, in temperatures like these, one small mistake, like losing a glove, can cost you your fingers with frostbite, or even worse, your life. My body temperature's 37 degrees. So on a day like today, I've got to maintain a difference between the environment and myself of 70 degrees. Not surprisingly, my priorities are shelter and warmth. As you can see, this tree is virtually a shelter in its own right, but to make it really snug, it's going to take a couple of hours' work. One thing that's always important in the Arctic is a sharp knife, but perhaps even more important than that is this, an axe. And if it's not sharp enough to do that, it's really not much use. A good tip, knock the snow down first, unless you want it down your neck when you start chopping. Lots of spruce boughs like this helps to windproof the shelter, and it acts as a reinforcement. On top of that, I'll pile lots of snow, make it really snug. Shoveling the snow on like this packs it all down, makes the shelter completely windtight, which means I'll stay warm in there in the night. Despite being -30, shelter building is hot work, and you must be careful that your sweat doesn't freeze in your clothes once you stop. It's better to keep cool by taking a layer of clothing off first. This'll be my bed, raised off the ground to allow the warmth of the fire underneath me. For the fire itself, I've dug down to the ground. That's to prevent moisture melting in the early stages of the fire and putting it out. But also, to make sure the fire lights well, I need to insulate it from the ground, and for that, I've split some wood. And I'll just lay that in there as a bed to begin with. Lighting fires when it's this cold can be difficult. The secret's good preparation. To start with, I've split some nice dry standing spruce. That burns really well. I've collected some dead, dry birch bark. That'll help get the flames built up to start with, and to make those catch properly, some nice dry spruce twigs. Most important of all, you keep your tinder dry and warm. The best place for that is inside your clothing, and you only get it out at the very last minute. For tinder, I'm using this. This is lichen that I pulled off the trees earlier. Fire's great for morale, but it's important to have enough firewood so that it doesn't go out at the coldest point in the night. Cutting firewood, that's thirsty work, so before I go to get any more, I'm going to put some snow on to melt. What I'm using to melt the snow is this. It's a mosquito head net. Always good to have with you. Pack it full of snow and that'll gradually melt and drip down into this cup. If you didn't have a mosquito net, you can improvise this really easily from a piece of clothing. I've even used a scarf before now. In these temperatures, you need a lot of water. If you haven't got a cooking pot, this may be the only way you can get water in a frozen land. Well, that's great. With the fire going now, I've got really comfortable shelter. This fire is a special fire. It gives out a lot of heat, nice warm dry atmosphere to keep me cozy, and it enables me to dry off any wet clothing. Of course, now I have to think about what I'm in contact with. So on the bed I put down lots of spruce boughs, and also where I put my feet, because the snow can conduct heat away from my body 20 times faster than those branches. And that's an important thing. In fact, knowing what not to touch is critical out here. That aluminium shovel I was using earlier, well, the aluminium will conduct heat away from my body 100 times faster than ice. And just to show you that, a few minutes ago, I cracked an egg on here, and that's it. That's not cooked there, that's frozen. Because the ambient temperature is 32 degrees Celsius below zero. And this is what happens to a banana. It goes as hard as iron. You could use it as a tent peg. In the winter, most of the useful plants are hidden under snow, but at least the needles from a pine tree can be cut up fine to make a warming drink packed with vitamin C. Well, a cup of pine needle tea makes all the difference. Warm, tasty drink. Of course, 5% extra effort leads to 50% more comfort. The crew, mind you, they're going back to a heated cabin while I'm stuck here for the night. But that's all right, I'm pretty much looking forward to it. A few things I have to do though before I settle in. Firstly, I'll take this tripod down. I don't want anything creating a shadow between me and the fire. I'll build the fire up so it'll burn all night, and then I'll crawl into my old sleeping bag. One important thing to remember with sleeping bags in the Arctic is not to have your head down inside the bag, because if your breath goes into the sleeping bag, it condenses there and you get cold. The answer is to put a balaclava on and just put up with a cold nose. And it is going to be cold. Nighttime temperatures can drop below -50. Moments like this, cold night, your mind turns to some of the tragedies of Arctic survival. In 1942, for example, a B-26 bomber crashed in Labrador. The crew made it to the ground safely, but then slowly they starved to death. The real irony was they were only an hour and a half to walk from an Inuit village. Because of things like that, instances where people died and they needn't have, survival training has been taken very seriously by the military. While I'm here in the Arctic, I'm going to visit just such a course. Really looking forward to today. I'm going to meet one of my oldest chums, a man called Lars Felt, who's responsible for all survival training within the Swedish military. Just a few kilometres up this lake, he's got a course on at the moment. A few years ago, the Swedish army realised that recruits raised in the cities no longer knew how to take care of themselves in the wilds. So Lars was ordered to organise survival training. The Arctic training he runs is second to none in the world. This course is for soldiers who want to become survival instructors, and it's tough. They'll be on their own for 5 days without food or supplies. The shelter they're making is called a quinsy. You can't build igloos here because the snow is too powdery. So you make a big pile of snow and then hollow it out using sticks to ensure the thicknesses of the wall are even. When you uncover the tip from inside, you stop digging. To complete the course, the soldiers must pass a crucial test. They must be able to make fire in under 60 seconds. That's not easy when you're hungry and your hands are frozen.
Du skyller på att du blir nervös nu så kommer man bara.
The ability to light a fire is obviously important in the Arctic, but fire can do more than just keep you warm. It can get you rescued. This special fire instantly sends dense smoke high into the air, attracting the attention of rescue planes overhead. A jet passes you in seconds, so a properly prepared signal fire can make the difference between life and death. Letting rescuers know where you are is one thing. Getting rescued is another, and in the Arctic that can take a long time. In 1991, a Canadian Air Force transport plane crashed near the North Pole with 18 people on board. The rescuers knew exactly where the plane had come down, but it took 2 days to get to them. In that time, they had to survive in temperatures as low as minus 70 degrees centigrade. The plane was on a routine supply mission to an airbase at Alert, less than 500 miles from the North Pole. Most of the passengers were from the military, but also on board was Bob Thomson, manager of the civilian-run store at the base.
I would go up there every 3 or 4 months just to see how things were going and make sure that they had the items they needed and things like that.
As the plane made its final approach to Alert, the crew made a fatal misjudgment and clipped the top of a hill.
I was waiting for the landing gear to come down, and then it was just a big, grinding, very loud, very violent noise. Somebody, close to me said something like, what's happening? And I just sort of blurted, we're crashing. I was still belted in and remembered sort of rushing air and then quite a sudden stop. I was lying in the snow in complete darkness.
Rescuers knew within minutes where the plane had crashed, but there were no helicopters at Alert, and the crash site proved to be impossible to reach by land. Bob was trapped in mangled bits of wreckage with a broken back and totally reliant on the surviving aircrew making him some shelter.
We were covered up, and I guess some wreckage had been found that was put behind us as a windbreak. And there was some kind of a tarpaulin or it was some kind of a heavy material that was put over.
As the hours ticked by, a ferocious storm blew up, bringing wind chill and unimaginable cold. Unable to move, Bob was freezing to death despite his makeshift shelter.
It was almost the feeling of the tingling feeling you have when your feet have been frozen, and that thawing, burning, tingling sensation. I was feeling that in my arms and my hands, and it would come and go, and it would almost run up to my shoulders, and then it would subside again, but I would have that burning, tingling feeling.
It was 32 hours before the first rescuers arrived to find 13 of the original 18 people on board still alive. The pilot who'd done so much to save Bob had died of hypothermia just hours before, but somehow Bob had survived.
I just thought either I was going to get out of there or I wasn't, and there was not a lot I could do about it. So it was a situation where if I toughed it out, there was a chance.
Bob lost 2 toes from his left foot and his right leg to frostbite. But 8 years on, he now owns and runs his own supermarket.
Customers come, boy, it's cold out there. Yeah, sometimes I kind of laugh to myself a little bit. It's no, that would be balmy by our standards up in Alert. But it's just it's hard to believe how cold that was.
Bob's sheer determination to live was crucial to his survival. You can never underestimate the importance of a positive mental attitude.
Maybe it depends on your other knowledge, but it could be about 80%. The strength to live and the will to live and not give up and endurance and all that. So it's very, very important.
How important is a sense of humour?
Very important. Even if I cannot sing, it's good to sing.
Dr. Anders Holmström is the Swedish Army's advisor on frostbite and the effects of extreme cold on the human body.
The cold makes you stress hormones, and the stress hormones make you produce more urine than indoors. And you have to keep up with that, drinking a lot. Because if you get dehydrated, the blood volume goes down and the circulation goes down, and perhaps your ability to work goes down. So drinking is one of the vital things to think of.
In the Swedish Army, getting frostbite is a court-martial offence. How do you thaw frostbite?
Well, you take your hand, put it on a place where it's white, and you just get the heat from the hand, and then the white spot is going away. But there's a problem if you have the hand. You have to put it inside your clothing like that, or if your feet, you have to put it in your comrade's armpit.
Is it dangerous to heat your hands too quickly?
Well, if you heat it with body heat is no difficult, but don't heat it on the fire, because you can't know how strong the fire is.
The Arctic can be really pretty, but of course the sunshine combined with all this snow can sometimes cause another problem: snow blindness. If you lose your goggles or your sunglasses, you'll be in real trouble. In those situations, you may have to improvise some sort of blinker using bark, cloth, or even carved out of wood like this, Inuit style. And they really work. Shelter, fire and water help to save the energy you've got in your body and use it efficiently. But to really stay warm, you've got to keep feeding your body's machine. And of course that means being able to find food. The lakes up here provide good fishing. The problem is how to break through a metre of ice. To do that, I need a tool that can often be found in wilderness cabins. That's what I'm looking for, an auger. That makes drilling through the ice real easy. There's the bait, and in this case I'm going to use this thing called a pike scissor. It's a spring-loaded hook that really gets hold of the fish and doesn't let it get away. But you could use just an ordinary hook weighted down with a bit of ballast. And I've attached the line to this stick, which has got a fork in it. Now the reason for this is I'm going to suspend the line in the hole using this stick, and if the hole freezes, I can chip it out without cutting the line, which is lower down. That's important. So I just drop the fish straight down the hole. Have to encourage him down a little bit. Use another stick for that. There he goes. Down it goes. So hold that there. You can put it on the lip, but it's better to use a second stick like this. Now, fishing holes like this freeze from the edge in if they're left on their own. So to prevent that, I'm going to stuff some spruce boughs down beside it. Right here. A good packing of spruce boughs will stop it freezing hard. And the last thing is to cover it all over with snow to keep it insulated. That also helps to prevent it freezing solid. And then I put a little twig in here just to mark its location.
I'll set another 5 hooks and leave them all overnight, and we'll see what we get.
Tell you what, that's the coldest my hands have been all the time I've been here. And the reason for that is that down on these lakes you get lots of low-lying cold air. You need a top tip then, this one. If you can't touch a little finger to your thumb and make this old Indian sign that means I'm all right, you're in trouble. Because your hands are so cold, you can't perform simple operations like lighting a fire or even driving out of here. The human eye can't see heat escaping from our bodies, but in these conditions you can literally feel it leaking away.
With a thermal imaging camera, you can really see what happens. The white and yellow areas show where I'm losing most heat. When I take off my glove, you can see just how quickly heat transfers to the glove. And if I touch anything like a glass fibre snowmobile with my bare hand, you can see how much heat I lose by conduction.
In deep snow, just moving can be almost impossible. When you consider that on a snowmobile, what takes 15 minutes travelling by machine can take up to 24 hours to walk, there are some real problems. Being able to improvise can be vital. I guess you could say I'm improvising now. I've borrowed the crew's cabin here so that I can show you clearly how to make this. This is the tool that will get you out through deep snow, the improvised snowshoe.
Any wood will work for this as long as it's flexible. Stripping the bark off helps the bindings to stay tight.
Now I'm just going to tie them loosely to start with at the fine tip. Now I've got to establish the point of balance for the snowshoe, because when I walk in it, only the toe is going to be attached. And I want the point to tip up so that it doesn't dig into the snow each time I take a step. There we go, I've lashed on the 2 cross pieces. This forward one goes under the ball of my foot and this rearward one under the heel. I've obviously used nylon cord. There's no real way of improvising that from natural materials in this environment in the winter. So that's one of the critical pieces of equipment you should always have in your pocket. At the tail end of the snowshoe, I just loosely bind the sticks together so that there's a bit of movement in them, some play, so they don't get broken. To finish a snowshoe, I need to curve the prow up like that, just like a ski, with this cord here, and put on some binding material. I'm using lampwick, which is a strange material that very commonly used in the far north. It's been used for binding materials for centuries, and it's absolutely perfect for this job. something you can often find left in cabins. Right, well, the proof of the pudding is in the doing. In survival situations, small things can make big differences. It's the custom in the Arctic Circle to always leave kindling in refuge huts so that someone who's cold can rewarm themselves quickly. It's also the custom to leave a box of matches with the matches sticking out like that, something that saved many lives. A few years ago, a man stationed in a remote weather station in Greenland managed to save his own life by following this common courtesy. He'd gone polar bear hunting with a colleague when, after spending the first night in a hut, they set out on a snowmobile in temperatures of -20. Well, they hadn't gone very far before the machine broke through ice. The passenger managed to jump off, and he took his gloves off and pulled the driver off of the machine, which had already gone into water. They tried to stagger back to the hut, but after only 100 yards, the driver collapsed and died.
The second man struggled on, knowing his only hope was to reach the hut. He'd lost his gloves in the accident, and his hands were badly frostbitten. By the time he made it into the hut, his hands were useless, but he still managed to light the fire.
The man spent 7 weeks in hospital, and luckily doctors were able to save his hands. But without a doubt, he owes his life to his own thoughtfulness for others and remembering to leave that simple matchbox. Oh, it's a beautiful morning. Right, well, now's the moment of truth. Going to see what's in those fishing holes. The crew have bet me a whiskey that there won't be anything. Nothing on that one. Hello, hello, hello. Come on, Mr. Pike. That's great. Beautiful pike for dinner. Couldn't be better. Another one. Number 2. Perfect. Well, not a bad haul though. 2 nice pike. Pretty good, I reckon, for one night's fishing.
I think that'll be a double whiskey, boys. A good meal and a drink. I can't believe my luck. Sometimes survival skills really do pay off. Next week, the power of positive thinking.